mental well-being was in the closet earlier. Mr. Munjal, I think either your connection is weak or your bandwidth currently this temporary period of time is weak.
I lost you there.
Yeah. So I said, let's go back to healthcare.
Yes.
Mental well-being was in the closet.
Yes.
This is literally VUCA times. Possibly the word VUCA was invented for COVID.
Yep.
So tell us, what's your advice to professionals, to entrepreneurs, to people watching this and who will read the magazine on how to cultivate resilience? Because ultimately, mental well-being and resilience are intertwined.
Correct.
So what's your advice? How does one do it?
So the first thing before professionals and before companies, I think it's us as families who have to accept that this is a real problem. In India, one of our challenges has been not accepting this as a problem or feeling ashamed if a member in the family has a challenge. You do not want to acknowledge it. You do not want to announce it. And therefore, you never actually address the issue. For the individual, it becomes very difficult because if they're not getting the help and the support, and in some cases, maybe even medical advice and medical treatment, then this can actually get worse. It can just spiral down for that individual. And it's well established now, the large section of the population is prone to getting things like depression and OCD and bipolar. So there are many situations which the mind creates. The mind, like the rest of the body, likes to be in a healthy situation. If the situation around us is not healthy, it actually has an impact on the mind. And some of us are able to express things and some are not able to express. Those who are not able to express find it even harder. For them, the impact on the mind and the brain and the heart and the soul is much more. Therefore, I think it must start from the families to nurture and accept those who have a problem, figure out a way to support and help them. That support could be just minimally from only listening to finding professionals to support, to getting physical help in terms of medication. So it could be a full breadth of responsiveness required. And this is the same for companies. Companies have to accept too. When people are locked in for so long, when people are scared whether I can or cannot meet another person, this plays on your mind. So people have been locked in now for months. Some activity has begun, but there are still many individuals who have not gone out of their homes for many months. So, of course, it is creating a massive challenge. And we have to accept, we have to bring this problem out in the open. We have to encourage more professionals to take this on as a profession. We have to encourage more clinics and more, even online consults are available worldwide, including in India. And again, hospitals need to look at this as a regular full discipline and profession.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Munjal. When somebody like you says it's okay to have this and we must address it, I think it does create a change, like it does with any other issue that somebody who has an influence takes up. Let me shift gears and ask you about Mr. Munjal, the individual. You achieved everything, as you said, you are very lucky to have been part of the hero journey, to be in the co-driver's seat, and having seen your father, uncles, brothers, and having still built an independent identity for Mr. Sunil Kant Munjal. You've done everything that somebody can do at 62, possibly, right? Now, is there a bucket list Mr. Munjal has? I'm not suggesting that you retire, sir. That's not
so one thing you should know about me, Anurag, because you have spoken to me earlier, I never talk about things that we are going to do. I'm happy to talk about things that we have done. I have no hesitation in talking about anything, good, bad, mistakes we've made. As you know, we make plenty of mistakes and we love experimenting. So mistakes are very, very much a part of our journey. But what is to be done, what we're going to do, that's not something I like to either talk about or announce. Yeah. So one of the things I am involved with right now quite closely and deeply is trying to figure out a way to increase the exposure and appreciation of Indian arts and culture. because we have inherited probably the richest cultural heritage in the world. I don't think there are any 10 countries put together which have the same kind of artisanal skills, the history of artisanal skills, music, theater, and culture overall. It is such an amazing, amazing rich culture. But over the last 250 years, it has been continuously declining. And in the last 50 years, particularly, some of it is completely depleting and dying away. So I think it deserves our time and attention of individuals, of companies, of institutions. You see, if you think back in history, the royalty used to be the patrons of the arts.
Absolutely.
And at that time, that's how the arts developed in many parts of the world, including in India. And they were big patrons. India's arts did not have the silos that we see today in the arts, because what we have now is a Western concept where theater is separate, music is separate, dance is separate. There they used to train people in everything. And then the British came in, and the British government, after the royalty, actually temples became the patrons for a while. So many of the art forms are practiced in the temples. So if you see, many of the paintings, the dances are done around sages, saints, gods, and the teaching from text of Upanishads, etc. And then many of our artisanal skills and arts are around festivals and agriculture and activity in our lives. But in independent India, the government became the patron, and frankly, the government has not done a great job of being a patron of the arts. I think it's about time that more people, more private citizens, more private institutions and more private companies come in, because worldwide, as we were discussing earlier, the best quality of healthcare, museums, research centers are all built on philanthropy. So
Absolutely.
We need to do that in India. So we are currently involved in setting up. If you're interested, I can actually announce an ideathon that we are just launching. I can announce it
Happily,
here if you like.
Happily.
Okay. We have not yet announced it, so we've only started the conversation on it. So we are trying to build a center where all of the art forms will be practiced together all the time. And for that, we want to build a physical place here. And because it will be a unique set of activities, not only taking care of the museum kind of displays, but also live creation of contemporarized form of all of these art forms. All visual arts, performing arts, performance arts, culinary arts, all of them at one time, and all intertwined with each other. And we will also run education programs and residencies and research programs here. So because these activities will be unique, we want the building itself to be unique. We want the activities in this building to be unique. So we are actually just launching an ideathon. We are not calling it a hackathon because it's not only about coding, about what a unique building like this should be like, which is steeped in India's history and culture and crafts, but at the same time uses the most modern technologies available in the world to make the building eco-friendly, energy efficient, as also responsive for people, multiple use of spaces. So that is going to get launched actually in the coming week itself.
And where would be the location of this cultural center?
Delhi.
Could
be Delhi,
okay.
Yeah.
I know that your daughter does it, but of course you're also involved with the Serendipity Arts Festival, which would happen in Goa.
Yes.
And then you're planning to do it online now, right?
We did do online in April because we had to do something at this time when people were locked in at home. And then we did a festival with 100 events in 6 days. We had 1 million visitors who came onto the festival site. And that was quite encouraging. So we also work like a platform. Oops, I will seem to lost you again.
No, I'm very much there. Mr. Munjal. I can hear you. I can hear you fully.
Okay.
I can see you fully. I can hear you fully.
Okay, so I can't see you. Go ahead. I can hear you, but I can't see you. So we'll carry on.
Yeah.
So
you said you're a platform.
Yes, so we are a platform. Not only do we do things ourselves, we are also encourage others to come onto this platform and work with us. So in this festival that we did in April, 50 of the projects were our foundations, and 50 came from institutions from around the world, including some of the top institutions in Europe, in Africa, in the US, literally from around the world, from Singapore, etc. And we have many of them who right now also work with us as partners, and we encourage that very much. And we also want to encourage full access here. So anybody who has any physical challenge, mental challenge, hearing challenge, visual challenge should be able to walk into the center, should be able to go around almost without help. So we will facilitate this through materials and technologies and design of the place. So we want to crowdsource ideas through this Ideathon, which will be announced shortly, for people to tell us how a center like this should actually be conceived and built.
Okay. Mr. Munjal, let me ask you my last two questions before I bring audience questions. One, over the last 45 days, there's been a discussion about India being self-reliant, discussion about competing with China, replacing China in some, value chain of businesses. Yes. India becoming an alternate destination for manufacturing, which is currently located in China. What is your view on this?
So, two parts of this. One, if you go back in history, at the end of the Mughal period, before the British came into India, India had 21% world trade, by the way. And at the very same time, China had 31% world trade, even at that time. So half the world trade was done by just these two countries. So in some sense, they say what goes around comes around. So it's not a big surprise that these countries, which are large countries, have the potential, have the genetic code and DNA of doing business and trade, are building up into where they are. China has put itself into a very awkward situation over the last 2 years, first with the trade war with the US, and then with the geopolitical territorial challenges with 8 different countries right now, and also on the maritime challenges with Japan and a whole host of countries on the Pacific coast. So for India, it is a unique opportunity to grow ourselves at this moment. Right. For a long time, we have talked of growing India's manufacturing, but we have really not been successful. Here is a real opportunity. So there are many companies in the world which have launched what is called a 1+1 strategy, or a China +1 strategy, or some of them just call it a +1 strategy. So that +1, in the last 2 years, countries that took major advantage of this was Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, Bangladesh, even countries in Latin America, South America, like Brazil, etc. And India got very little part of that. This time around, China has again been targeted by many others. And there are many companies who are saying we have to go and look for an alternate source. So there are 3 opportunities here. One is companies who are currently existing with investments in China to attract some or as many as possible of them to come to India. Second, companies which buy from China to become an alternate supplier to them. And third is be part of a global value chain, bigger global value chain, as the world has evolved over the last 70 to 80 years. Now, this time around, India is a little bit better organized, a little bit more organized. The government, departments, Invest India and others have made a list of 1,400 companies that are possible to make individual pitches to and attract them to come and set up investments in India. So I think all of the 3 is things we need to work at. We must do it professionally. We must do it well, because this is a real opportunity, but it is a timed opportunity. There's a window. Okay. This opportunity is not for more than a year, at most 2. If you don't take advantage in the decision, the implementation, of course, will take longer. If we do not get these players to take a decision to come here now, their boards are debating these issues, we will lose that opportunity.
Thank you. I agree with you. Just to support what you said, you talked about Bangladesh. India traditionally has been very good in textiles, and yes, we do a fair amount of exports. But we do $15 billion of textile business. Guess how much does Bangladesh do, sir?
No, I'm aware.
So you would do. But for our viewers, they do about $37 billion.
Correct.
So they're almost 2.5 times a small country like Bangladesh. So we have a lot of catching up to do. And as Mr. Munjal says, right now may be the time because there is a window available for the next few months. My last question.
Yes.
Mr. Munjal, the government is doing its best to deal with both lives and livelihoods.
Yes.
But if the government had to revive the economy, and the economy is right now at a low ebb, I hope the lowest and it doesn't go beyond this, but what would be your recommendations, or what do you think the government will do to revive the economy? The obvious ones are spend on infrastructure. The obvious one, a lot of economists are saying, don't worry about printing currency, don't worry about ratings, go ahead, do it, and eventually we'll come back to where we were. What is your advice, and how do you see the government reviving the economy?
So I think there are three things which need to happen. First, by the way, I agree with the government. I know there are many people who criticize the lockdown. I think the lockdown was a very good idea and probably was essential for us, because that allowed us the time to do the preparation that we did. It allowed us to push back the climb up of big numbers of infection. That's when we created the capacities in our hospitals, got everything else ready. But in the bargain, our economy got badly affected. And as we were discussing earlier, many companies have got so badly affected, they're finding it hard to survive. So from the government side, we have made three kinds of requests. One is, you're right in what you're saying, that inflation should not be a concern at this time. If anything, deflation should be a concern. And global rating should only be a concern if we cannot explain to the rating agencies what we are going to do if we print extra money, or if we monetize some of our deficit. What are we going to do with it? We will deploy it only for productive assets and for a response to this pandemic situation. If we can do that, I believe most rating agencies would understand and not downgrade you. Right now, they are considering downgrades because of the slowing of the economy, because of the reduction in collection of taxes and GST and everything else. So we have to demonstrate that with what we will do, we will actually revive the economy. And third, they have to put money. If you think about where the business has grown in the recent time, it's in all of the businesses which are to do with those who got direct fiscal benefit. I'm not talking about the monetary for a minute. The fiscal benefit went to the rural areas, agriculture, and the very poor. All three are consuming right now. So sectors like bicycles, motorcycles, tractors, fertilizers, sugar, all of these sectors are doing well. Other, of course, than healthcare and the communication technologies, etc., which are allowing us to do events like this. So the government does need to print some more money. They may ask for gold or something else to back that. They should make a request and pitch to individuals to pledge their gold, maybe give them some return, no questions asked. Maybe they should ask the temples for some of that gold. If they are afraid of the deficit, etc., then you're fully backed. But even without that, I think it's worth printing some more money and providing liquid cash support to the middle class of India and to the industry of India. If not all industry, certainly the mid-size and small industry, and sectoral support to those sectors which have been hurt the most. We do know sectors like travel, tourism, airlines, etc. They have been demolished right now in such bad state. And there are many others, the movie theaters, for example. You can't go to a movie theater right now. And these are places which actually need support, either salary support. You have to figure out a way. And there are many tools available, because around the world this has been done. You can pick the tools that work for us. We can indigenize them to our need and our form. And I do think that will be a big help. And I do expect, by the way, that government is keeping some of its powder dry to do at least one, if not two more support packages of the fiscal support to India.
Thank you, Mr. Munjal. It's been nice talking to you. I've spoken to you before. It's always a pleasure. There are a couple of questions, but I'll choose the one. I'll only take the questions related to education. There are lots of them. But a lot of people are asking, how do you re-skill the teachers? How do you reorient the teachers? How can we get the new education system if we are not retooling our teachers? How do you change the mindset of teachers? That's the question.
Sure.
In a nutshell.
Very, very important. And that's what I was trying to say earlier. One of our biggest challenges is going to be this. But please also remember, these teachers have been conditioned. We have told them, this is what you have to do. Right now, the policy is that I'm going to test you only on your ability to cram something. So when the policy says that, the teacher is working they're oriented to work towards that policy. I do believe many of them will actually reorient themselves the moment the new policy gets implemented, but not all of them will. So training programs, skilling or reskilling programs will have to be an integral part of implementation of this new policy, and will have to be at multiple levels, right from the entry level in schools to higher education. In all of those areas, reorientation will be very much a part of it. But this will be an effort well worth making, because the output of this will benefit India for generations to come.
Absolutely. I hope you have your answer. Last question that I'll take is, what is your message to people who have despair or looking for hope and are a little anxious?
So the one thing I can tell you is, when I look at the situation right now, both in India and worldwide, one thing is clear, that the vaccine is not coming in a hurry. But at the same time, people have begun to understand that it does not stop our lives completely. That we can live our lives in some form of new normal until we find a vaccine. Many activities are possible, but the precaution is essential. None of this should be done without precaution. I don't want any of us to be irresponsible. The three basic things that we have told on day one are still equally valid. Maintaining the distance, wearing the mask, and the hand hygiene. These three are the most essential. And by the way, the mask is the single most effective of all of them, just for your information. So if we follow these, we can actually get back to doing many, many things that we would like. So I think despair and hopelessness is behind us, or it should be behind us, because we should understand that we do not have to bring everything to a stop. Even where there is a high breakout of infection, the suggestion that we have been making to governments is isolate and lock down only an apartment, at most a building, not the entire lane, and certainly not the entire colony, and certainly not the entire district. And most governments are now agreeable that that is the more practical way of addressing it, especially at the stage we are, because herd immunity is also gradually building up. As we saw in the Sero surveys that were done, that in different parts of the country, from 20% in some cases up to 57% of people have already been infected without even knowing they were. So that's the good thing about this infection, is that it has no negative impact on everybody. It's a very small percentage which need to get hospitalized or need medical attention. For the rest of us, we might get it and might get okay and develop antibodies without even knowing it. So complete despair is no longer the situation, by the way. The earlier fear was that it spreads very fast, which it does, and also kills very fast and kills many people. That is not correct. The number of people dying and the mortality rate is very, very low, much lower even than the common flu, emphysema, cardiac disease, road accidents. It's actually lower than most other causes of death that we have seen. So I think we need to put that fear behind us, but do everything with the sensible precaution.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Munjal. What you're saying is that, yes, it is an issue, but take precautions and don't have despair. This shall too pass.
Yes.
Don't know the timeline. Till then, hang in there. So we're grateful to you at BW Business World for talking to us, and we hope to talk to you soon. And I'd like to offer that we're happy to take your Ideathon to our platforms. We do about 30 million traffic on the main site, another 10 million on the other side, so about 40 million on the Business World side. So we're happy to talk to your team and take your idea, because what you're doing helps the Indian culture. It is a way to give back to society. So happy to contribute to that, and we look forward to having a conversation soon again.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for all the great work that you do. My compliments and good wishes. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.